Hello, students of American literature. Professor Berninger here. Going to talk to you today about, and answer your questions mostly, about James Baldwin's Going to Meet the Man. An unforgettable story for its power, for its violent imagery, for cutting right to the heart of, in this case, Southern racism. In two different eras, right? Important to note that this story is partially flashback, and it's very interesting to look at the changes between 1930s and 1950s, the two time periods that this story covers. So keep that in mind, people, keep that in mind. I'm just going to jump right into your excellent questions here. You guys did a good job with these, thank you. We'll start with Bella. In the beginning, I questioned, why does Jesse hate black people so much? Well, that's always a good question, right? And I have absolutely zero answer for that, because I've never hated any particular group of people, thankfully. I don't know why. Genetics, my parents, I don't know. But I've never hated a group of people. Of course, I've been, raised in America. I have no doubt racism in me and judge people on race and preconceived ideas that I'm always working to get past, right? No one is free of racism in America. That's just a fact. But that's different from hating a group of people. So I have no idea how someone can just hate someone because they're Asian, black, white, a woman, a man. I don't know. I hate pickles, but that's just because I don't like the taste of them. But as far as this hatred towards a group, I don't get it. Sorry, Bella. I think that story does provide a little bit of an answer, so we'll work our way around to that. I understand during this time it was normal to hate black people, yes, but this was keeping him up at night. It seemed to be the only thing he could talk about. Was this because he was sheriff? Partially, because as the sheriff in a southern town, he's the leading racist in town. Then as the story went on, he talks about how black and whites both go to the same heaven. I do think that our author, or not our author, our narrator here, Jesse, who's a white man, our author is a black man. The narrator, Jesse, is, now wait a minute. No, he's not our narrator, excuse me, he's not our narrator. The story is written in the third person point of view. Okay, so our main character, Jesse, the white sheriff in town. I do think he's having some questioning, issues. I think he knows things have changed from when he was a kid. And it was much easier to lynch people and easier to be a racist, and all the white people were bonded in their hatred, and now they're less so. And he has the fellow who he arrested and beats in jail and hits with the electric cattle prod, talks back, right? And asserts his authority. So I think Jesse is actually going through some sort of questioning of his racism. Unfortunately, at the end, he does not. He has that flashback to the lynching he participated in as a kid, and that restores his racism and his erection as well. It's easy to miss this, so I just want to point this out now. At the beginning of the story, the fourth line of the story, he is suffering from impotency, erectile dysfunction. Well, God damn it, woman, he said, it's not my fault. He blames the black kid who resisted him, his power in jail, for the impotency. But by the end of the story, he can get an erection, and he has sex with his wife, Grace, and goes about making more racists. Hopefully she doesn't get pregnant, but it goes about making more racists. So that is a big part of the story. So I do, Bella, I too pick up on a sort of maybe questioning on his part, but ultimately at the end, his racism is reconfirmed when he thinks about that glorious day when he was a kid and he saw a black man castrated and hanged and burned, lynched by the mob, right, by the mob. Good questions, good questions. Grace, how does Jesse justify his racism with Christianity? Well, a lot of people, listen, Christians, just like African Americans and white people and non-Christians, come in all varieties, okay? Come in all varieties. Christianity in the South was a great supporter of slavery. Many preachers and pulpits talked about slavery, how slavery's in the Bible and it's a good thing, and maybe we should Christianize the slaves and make them a little bit better as we beat them and use them and rape them. So Christianity has long been tied to racism. And you know, churches to this day everywhere are in many ways segregated. A white church, black church. Even around here, the towns and villages have white churches and black churches. Now maybe some white people go to the black church, so you know, it's not like a law, obviously, but it is the black church is a particular sort of place in society and in history. And again, there was a recent documentary on PBS about the black church, and it was very well done, very interesting to watch. So yeah, it's done very often somehow, and I'm stumped by a lot of this stuff because I just can't grasp it. But James Baldwin might be stumped by it too, but he puts it on display for us, and so we can see it. And maybe those of us who can't grasp it can see it and say, wow, this is bad. I need to fight this. What does the story say about culture and human nature? All right, I'm going to hit right there, Grace. I think the story says human nature is not racist. I'm not sure that that's true, okay? But I think the story is saying it's cultural. And someone else asked about this. Jesse and Otis. I love Otis in this story. Jesse and Otis, when they were 8. Jesse's white, Otis was a black boy. They used to roll around in the mud together, right? Then they're both black, right? And that's okay when they're kids, right? But once, you know, Otis needs to be reminded because of the lynching, as Jesse's dad says, you know, Otis needs to be aware of these lynchings so that Otis knows his place and Otis behaves. Keep the black man subservient. So I think that it is learned. I think the fact that Jesse is not born a racist and he is taken to the lynching to learn racism, to have racism passed down to him in this violent ritual, which gets, I mean, something like, see a kid, imagine you're 8 and you see you're in a group of white people and there's fire and there's shiny blades and there's this dominance and killing. I mean, it's very intoxicating, right? It's very intoxicating. As adults, you know, it's repulsive. But I think if you're a kid and you feel this bond with your mother, he sort of has this admiring Oedipal moment with his mom. He's on his dad's shoulders. It's this bonding moment with his family, and it's sick. But I do think you can read this story as there's a little grain of optimism there that if racism is learned in the future, maybe it can be not taught, and maybe in the future it can be unlearned. Is James Baldwin the greatest writer of the 20th century? Sure, why not, Grace? I could not argue against that at all, period. James Baldwin is a fabulous writer, intellectual. I highly recommend, I know I'm recommending documentaries all the time. Tuck it away. If you don't watch it now, put it on a post-it. I Am Not Your Negro is the name of it. Write that down. I Am Not Your Negro. And try to see it. It's probably on Films on Demand through our library. It's on PBS. Check the whatever service you get streams from. But it's all about James Baldwin. And he's awesome. He just speaks so clearly and just cuts right to the heart of issues of race in America. It's stunning. It is stunning. Case Garrigan, is Jim C a reference to Jim Crow? I like that, probably. Yep. Jim Crow being a set of laws and customs in the South that kept black people segregated and subservient. And how come many white racists, especially slave owners, raped black women if at the same time they believe that black people are subhuman? I think this is something Baldwin's trying to address here with Jesse getting off on racial domination, without question. And it says it in the little biography that's in my book here. James Baldwin's interest in what it means to be black. Baldwin was involved in a preoccupation with the intertwining of sexual and racial concerns. So yes, Jesse in this story desires the black women. He talks about going to a different part of town, picking up a black prostitute, and I think he's just tearing off a piece, you know, having sex with her. You know, I won't arrest you if you have sex with me. So the melding of racism, hatred with sexual desire is without question evident in this story. And folks, you don't have to think real hard about this. It's very clear in our American history and in our culture today. This sort of it happens all the time. There was a senator from South Carolina named Strom Thurmond in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s. He was around for decades as a senator, and he ran as a Dixiecrat. When the Democrats became the pro-race party, pro-equality, he wanted no part of that, and he ran for president as a Dixiecrat. Well, guess what? All the while he's having an affair with a black woman. He fathers a child with her. He pays for this child's expenses throughout her life. Meanwhile, he is an open racist for most of his political career. I can't, it's something else I just can't explain because I just don't understand it myself. Think of this: hatred and racism is a very strong feeling. If someone has a very strong feeling about hating blacks, that blacks are lesser than us, or hating whites, or hating anyone, that's a very strong feeling. And I think that sort of jumping over to a strong sexual urge, I think the two things are very connected. And you might have to hate that person more because you're sexually attracted to that person or that group. Again, I don't know. I've never hated a group before, so I can't relate to this at all. But if you look at music, and if you look at the sexualization of African Americans, that sometimes they do themselves, and of course that appeals to white audiences, whether it's male or female rappers or singers or dancers throughout the 20th century. It is without question without question. So this story does definitely get at that mixing of racial dominance and sexual potency. It's no coincidence that the black man who's lynched is castrated, right? There's lynchings are, and some of you know this already, black men, mostly black men. Some white people were lynched, about 1,000, over 3,000 black people were lynched from about 1880 to 1960. But oftentimes black men were accused of doing something to white women, touching them, whistling at them. Emmett Till, right, accused of whistling at a white woman. Raping them, touching them, you know, almost always completely made up, right? But this idea that we had to protect white women, so we have to lynch a black man every so often, we have to protect our white women because those sexual beings, those sexual bulls, right? That's a very derogatory term, or a buck. Those are slave terms, referring to a black man as a buck or a bull as a slave term, that are mentioned. The language used in this story, it's all wrapped up. It's all wrapped up. Not only here, but just watch, right? Just watch popular culture for it even today. So we'll pick up in part 2 in a minute.